night of April 1st, 2006 should have been one of celebration for Brian Shaffer, a bright and charismatic second-year medical student at Ohio State University. Brian had just finished his final exams and was ready to let loose with his closest friends. Spring break had arrived, and for Brian, the evening was a chance to unwind before a planned trip to Miami with his girlfriend, Alexis Wagoner, a vacation that some suspected might end with a marriage proposal. But what began as a night of laughter and drinks would soon spiral into one of the most baffling disappearances in modern true crime history. By sunrise, Brian Shaffer would vanish without a trace, leaving behind a mystery so perplexing that even seasoned investigators would be left grasping at shadows. Brian was the kind of person who left an impression, intelligent, outgoing, and deeply loyal to those he cared about. His friends described him as the life of the party, someone who could light up a room with his energy. But beneath that cheerful exterior, he carried a quiet grief. His mother had passed away just months before, and though he rarely spoke of it, those closest to him knew the loss weighed heavily on his heart. Still, as he stepped into the ugly tuna saloona that night, there was no indication that anything was wrong. He was in good spirits, laughing with his best friend, William Clint Florence, and looking forward to the future. The ugly tuna saloona was a popular bar near campus, known for its rowdy atmosphere and cheap drinks. Brian and Clint had started their night there, then left briefly to meet up with another friend, Meredith Reed, before returning for one last round. Security cameras would later capture the final moments of Brian's known whereabouts. At 1:55 a.m., he was seen standing near the escalator that led to the bar's entrance, engaged in conversation with two women. He appeared relaxed, smiling, completely unaware that these would be the last images of him ever recorded. Moments later, he turned toward the entrance of the bar, and then, inexplicably, he was gone. When the bar closed at 2 a.m., Clint and Meredith waited outside, assuming Brian had left ahead of them. But as minutes turned to hours with no sign of him, their confusion grew. By the next morning, when Brian didn't return to his apartment, concern set in. When Monday arrived and he failed to board his flight to Miami, his family and friends knew something was terribly wrong. The police were called, and the investigation began at the last place Brian had been seen, the ugly tuna saloona. What they discovered only deepened the mystery. The bar was located in a high-crime area and was equipped with multiple security cameras, including one that monitored the escalator leading to the entrance. Footage showed Brian entering the bar, but there was no record of him ever leaving. The only other possible exit was a service door that led to a construction site, a hazardous maze of scaffolding and debris that would have been nearly impossible to navigate in the dark, especially after a night of drinking. Police scoured the area, searching dumpsters, sewers, and nearby buildings, but found nothing. It was as if Brian had simply evaporated into thin air. As days turned to weeks, the case grew colder. Brian's apartment was burglarized shortly after his disappearance, raising hopes of a possible connection. But the lead went nowhere. Desperate for answers, his father, Randy Shaffer, still grieving the recent loss of his wife, turned to a psychic who claimed Brian's body could be found in water near a bridge. Randy spent agonizing hours wading through the Olentangy River with a search party, but the waters yielded no clues. Meanwhile, Alexis continued calling Brian's phone every night, listening as it rang straight to voicemail, until one evening in September, when, against all odds, it rang 3 times before going silent. A cell tower ping placed the signal in Hilliard, 14 miles from Columbus, but the carrier later admitted it could have been a system glitch. The investigation took a darker turn as suspicions swirled around those closest to Brian. Nearly everyone who had been with him that night agreed to take a polygraph test, except Clint Florence. His attorney insisted Clint had nothing to hide, but the refusal raised eyebrows. The 2 women Brian had been speaking to before his disappearance were identified and cleared, but questions lingered. Years passed with no breakthroughs. Missing person posters bearing Brian's face, noting his distinctive tattoo and a black fleck in his left iris, plastered the city. Pearl Jam's Eddie Vedder, one of Brian's favorite musicians, even paused during a concert in Cincinnati to plead for information. Randy Shaffer, channeling his grief into action, joined forces with other families of missing persons to push for reforms in Ohio's missing persons laws, a small but meaningful legacy in the face of unbearable loss. Then, in 2008, tragedy struck again. While cleaning up debris from a windstorm in his backyard, Randy was struck by a falling branch and killed. In an online condolence book, a cryptic message appeared. To Dad, love Brian, U.S. Virgin Islands. For a fleeting moment, hope surged. Had Brian been alive all this time? But police quickly traced the post to a public computer in Ohio. It was a cruel hoax, one final twist of the knife, in a case already riddled with false leads and dead ends. Over the years, theories about Brian's fate have ranged from the plausible to the outlandish. Some believe he staged his own disappearance, fleeing to start a new life, perhaps even living out his dream of playing in a Jimmy Buffett-style band. Others think the weight of his mother's death became too much, and he took his own life in some hidden location. There are whispers that he may have met with an accident in the Ugly Tuna's construction zone, his body concealed to avoid legal repercussions. More ominously, online sleuths have linked his case to the so-called smiley face killer theory, an alleged serial killer targeting young men near bars and leaving their bodies near water. But with no body, no physical evidence, and no credible sightings, every theory remains just that, a theory. In 2018, the Ugly Tuna Saloon closed its doors for good, rumored to be converted into office space. Cadaver dogs had searched the building years earlier, finding no trace of Brian, but the demolition felt like the final blow to any hope of answers. If Brian never left the bar that night, whatever happened to him may now be buried beneath layers of concrete. And time, to this day, Brian Shaffer's disappearance remains one of the most haunting, unsolved mysteries in true crime. A promising young man on the verge of a bright future who stepped into the shadows and never returned. His case is a labyrinth of red herrings, dead ends, and eerie coincidences, a puzzle with missing pieces that may never be found. For his family, his friends, and the detectives who have spent years chasing ghosts, the question remains, what really happened to Brian Shaffer? And will the truth ever come to light?